I've crafted a lot of my Righteous Fire gear, especially some of the more expensive pieces, and overall this has been a very profitable experience. I bought many of my early upgrades, such as my Watcher's Eye and my Brass Dome, by selling spare things after crafting. Also, as a result of crafting things myself, I've gotten several upgrades which I wouldn't have been able to afford buying it at market price, at least at the time where I made it. So today, I'm going to break down everything I've made and how I did it. Keep in mind, some of these items are going to be cheaper to buy than craft yourself, especially if you only need a basic version. For others, you can easily craft it and make a profit. And if you want something really good, you are probably going to have to make it yourself. But always do a little bit of research, check on pathofexile for how easy it is to make, and how much it costs to buy versus how much it might cost to craft. Also keep in mind, there is RNG here. You might get luckier than me, or you might be unluckier. And you should always plan for getting unlucky rather than lucky. So make sure to have spare currency before starting some of the big projects that I'll get into later. But first up, how did I upgrade my shield, since it's a little different from my previous Righteous Fire video. I started by buying a fractured base with plus 2% to all maximum resistances for 3 divines, and then I rolled it using scorched, dense, and pristine fossils. The goal there is to block as many prefixes as possible in an attempt to force +1 to all fire spell skill gems. Then, obviously I want an open prefix to craft life, and any good suffixes are a plus. If I'm lucky, I'll hit something like 3% max fire res or increased fire damage. You can do this on a non-fractured base as well, though it will have to be an intelligence shield, not in dex, not in strength, pure intelligent bases only, otherwise you won't hit the +1 all fire. Now, if you just need a very simple shield, it shouldn't be too expensive, at least as of right now, to buy one. Basic shields were 40 to 50C last that I checked. The big advantage of crafting it yourself is you could hit something even better. Fire damage, max fire res, and end up with a shield that's probably worth more like a couple divines. Though, do be warned, if you're crafting it yourself you're going to have to settle for 70 life, whereas if you buy one you could get 80 or 90. In this case, it really is as simple as just spamming the fossils, and you should start seeing results within 10 to 20 resonators. I got reasonably lucky with the 2 that I hit, though even then, it's not an expensive craft if you don't need much on the item. Next up, if all you need is a basic ring, I suggest heading over to Rog. He excels at making basic rings, or gloves like the ones that I'm using in my build. But if you want something a bit better, it's time to roll with Essence of Insanity. You can either start from a fresh base and spam essences for something decent, this would be a good budget option, or buy a fractured ring, either with fractured life or fractured chaos resistance, and roll until you get the res and attributes you need. If a ring doesn't have fractured life, you'll probably want to do some metacrafting. Suffixes can't be changed, and veiled chaos to hopefully hit life and mana regen. The mana regen's useless, but the life is very good. That's exactly how I made both of my rings. I believe the bases were 50C for one and 1 divine for the other. And don't get too hung up on high item level bases. You can make a pretty darn good ring on a level 70-ish base. Just be sure to double check on either PoE or pathofexile before buying something. Next up, I want to talk about one of the more involved crafting projects I did. If you want to make an RF helmet, you're going to be grabbing spares. Because if you just want a really basic simple helmet, it's easier and cheaper to buy it. If you want something good, say with more elemental damage, life, and both conk and burning, then you're going to need to craft it yourself, then you may hit what you want within 1 divine of essences or within 40. This is a pretty high variance craft. So if you want to do this, make 10 or 20 helmets, and hopefully you turn a profit along the way. Again, if all you need is more LA damage, crafted life, and conk or burning, you should just buy it. At least as of right now, it's far, far cheaper than making it yourself. But if you want to get fancy, say by adding resistances, life regeneration rate, both conk and burning, or +1 gems, then you want to start crafting, since most of those are in the range of 10 to 15 divines, at least last I checked. I started by picking up item level 84 Royal Burgonets along with perfect fossils and resonators. I wanted quality for extra armor. Then I also bought 7 divines worth of Essence of Horror. I then ruled each helmet until I hit either conk or burning. At that point, I'd stop and price check it. Any helmets that had life, resistances, or regeneration rate would be more valuable, and I'd factor that in. An open prefix to craft something like +1 gems was also valuable, and I'd factor that into the price as well. From there, I finished the items by crafting. In the case of the best ones, and my current helmet, I decided to do some metacrafting. Suffixes can't be changed, Veiled Chaos. The goal of this is to hit +2 to level of AoE gems. I then blocked with +1 skeletons on the Unveil and hoped to get lucky. The odds aren't too bad here, and in my case, I definitely got lucky, hitting T1 life on the Veiled Chaos Orb. Now, for example, what did those 7 Divines of Essences give me? I made 7 helms successfully, most of which had at least crafted life, a lot of them had 20 to 40% resistance, and a few were even the rarer burning damage variant, which I could use for meta crafting. Unfortunately, it's been a couple days since I made them, and only 4 have sold. The Faux Veil for 1.9 Divines, the Tempest Glance for 1.4, the Horror Dome for 99 Chaos, and the Rapture Visor for 1.4. This means that I have 3 helmets still unsold, representing a significant portion of my investment. In crafting these 7 helmets, I spent 10.5 Divines, plus an additional 2 metacrafting my existing helmet, which is a lot to spend all at once, though still less than the finished item would cost me. And as for the 4 helmets that did sell, I got back around 5.3 Divines, which isn't terrible, but isn't exactly great either. The rest are taking a while to sell, even though I've lowered prices significantly. This is why I don't advise a craft if you just need a functional RF helmet. It's much easier to buy something approximately as good as the Horror Dome than craft for yourself. Crafting like this is something that you do when you have money and want to improve your gear significantly, where buying one outright would be 10 plus Divines or it might not exist at all. Though that said, prices could easily turn around. Early in the league, I crafted a bunch of RF helmets. Essences of Horror were cheaper, and the prices were generally higher. I'd regularly sell them for 2 or even 3 Divines. This was how I bought my Watcher's Eye and 6-link Brass Dome. With these 7 helmets, I'm going to break even at best, lose a couple Divines at worst. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. The final item is awesome and I needed it. Plus, I wanted to have a backup in case my meta crafting bricked the prefixes. But unlike many of the other crafting projects in this video, I'd only advise doing it when you're truly ready to min-max and have the money to spare. On the other hand, the Stygian Vice craft is very accessible. Deafening Essence of Envy, at least last I checked, was inexpensive, and it's easy to roll a Stygian with good stats. In fact, you could even chaos spam these and have pretty good success. The reason that I used Deafening Essence of Envy is I wanted to guarantee chaos resistance. The goal was life, chaos res, and maybe something like life regeneration. A flash mod would also sell pretty well, and if I could get increased life, that was even better. To do that though, I first needed a really good one with an open prefix. That way I could slim the Hunter's Exalt for % life. Plenty of people are playing Toxic Rain and would be happy to buy one with increased chaos damage, and if you hit the Flask Charge on crit mod, that'll sell even better. So I bought 15 Stygian Vises, 60 Fertile Catalysts, and around 2 Divines worth of Essences. Then I scoured all the belts, got the quality up to 20% to increase the value of life modifiers, and began slamming the Essences on. After rolling them, I got a whole bunch of belts. In general, I priced it based on the life and the resistances. If it had a modifier like Flask Effect Duration, then I raised the price a little bit. If it had weapon elemental damage or armor, I raised the price a little bit. And if it had life regeneration, I also priced it based on that, since a lot of Righteous Fire Juggs want a Stygian Vice. But other stats like Energy Shield, unless it was absolutely perfect for a hybrid build, I was going to ignore. Sure, an RF Inquisitor might want something like that, but a T3 roll or T4, not that impactful. Of all the belts I rolled, the Ghoul Girdle, Dire Lash, Skull Lock, Onslaught Lock, Victory Harness, Corruption Buckle, Honor Buckle, and Golem Clasp all sold quickly for an impressive 13.3 Divines. This not only made up for the fact that I spent 6.4 Divines including slamming 2 belts, but I also roughly doubled my money, and I expect the rest of the belts to sell pretty quickly. That said, before you see easy Divine Orbs, do a bit of research because prices shift over time, and even by this video existing, the price may come down. That said, because Stygian Vises generally have so many outcomes, I do always suggest buying multiple bases here, and most of the time the craft will pay for itself. There's a lot of combinations that are useful to other builds, even if they're not good for you. You're probably excluding CI builds by rolling for Chaos Res, but everything else is fair game. And anything with high life and res should be very easy to sell. Pathfinders or other Flask-reliant builds love Flask Effect Duration. Life Regen is favored by RF and maybe even Bone Shatter Juggs. It's also advantageous to underprice the market by just a little bit. Don't be the most expensive, instead be one of the least expensive. That way it'll sell quickly and you can always craft more. As a note though, the Hunter Slams can get pricey. Even though there's no true fail state, at worst you'll get some chaos damage, it's still a pretty big investment, and it might take a few tries to hit T1% life. So you can always wear a belt without the percent life until you have enough currency to start slamming. Now, in a previous video, I did talk about how I crafted my weapon. That was my RF tips and tricks, which I'll link down below and up in the card. If you want to check that out, then go ahead and do so. But if you want to know how to make a more advanced weapon, you start from a fractured +1 all spell skill base. Then roll it with Essence of Fear for minion damage or Scorched Fossils to hit fire damage. And also keep rolling until you hit +1 to level of all fire spell skills. From there, hopefully you have an open suffix mod to do prefixes can't be changed, scour to remove the suffixes, and multi-mod with fire.multi and trigger. It should be noted here, this isn't the only way to do this, and depending on prices in the economy, it may not even be the best way. This is how I'm planning to craft my weapon, but I'm going to do a little bit of a reassessment in the future, as it could be better to just buy it, or maybe even use a non-fractured base or a completely different fracture. If you're curious about what sort of weapon to look out for, be sure to check out my RF Jugg guide, which I'll also link. And if you found this crafting to be helpful or informative, then be sure to leave a like on the video while you're down there. Now, that pretty much covers most of my items. There's only a few left. That's things like cluster jewels, which you can do via Scorched Fossils or Harvest Reforge, but at current prices, I found it better to just buy them. And similarly, I found it easier to buy my jewels for around 1 divine. Same with the amulet. Now, if there's a lot of demand for a more detailed guide, I might go into some of these in the future. If you want to see that, do let me know down in the comments, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the video when I upload it. But for now, that's how I crafted the gear that I did craft, and a few ideas for how I might craft things in the future that I plan to replace. Remember, you could be luckier than I was, or less lucky than I was, so always make sure to have spare currency before crafting. But that said, don't be scared to try a few projects, because crafting can often yield a profit. Just do a little price checking and testing the craft out on pathofexile before doing it for real, and also making sure it's not cheaper to just buy what you want. But with that said, I hope you found this interesting. If you ever want to jump back, I will have timestamps so you can jump around and find a specific craft. And if you decide to follow along, do be sure to let me know what you made down in the comments below. Before I go, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. And support from patrons is especially important for long projects like this that often take multiple hours across several days. If you want something else to watch, maybe check out my RF Jugg build guide, some RF tips and tricks, the day 3 version of my build, or the ROG crafting guide that I mentioned earlier. You can also go for a recommendation that's on screen right now. But with that said, thank you for watching, congratulations on making it to the end, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.